the other point we made as CII is that there needs to be support to get the consumption back on track. Consumption has been a bit fragile after the second wave and has not been helped by the third wave. And the rural economy is a very important part of that. The positive thing is the rural economy has grown at 3.9%. Agriculture has grown at 3.9%, which is good. But I think continued support for the Manrega schemes, anything that can be done to help household budgets, to reduce expenses on medical, on education, etc. And also, any support that can be given for the high contact sectors, which have been significantly impacted by the three waves of the pandemic. I think all this will help. And focus on rural infrastructure certainly creates jobs in the rural areas.
Mr. Bajaj, we're going into the union budget speech at 11 a.m. with the top three gainers from the Nifty being the private sector banks. What a turnaround story we've seen so far when it comes to both the public sector banks as well as the private sector banks. As a leading member of the financial industry, Mr. Bajaj, big hopes as far as union budget and banks go, whether it is disinvestment, privatization has of course been a buzzword.
Very clearly so, Narendran. As you know, we had a great budget last year. We hope that this gets followed up so that what we see is consistency in policy, further support to infrastructure from the government till private sector investments, which we've seen green shoots of, start really hitting the ground. Continued support through Manrega or to the rural poor, but also a similar support to the urban poor. We get some of these things happening, and divestment, as you said, we've done one big one with Air India, many more to come. All this put together should firmly put us on a path of growth. And in addition to that, continue to focus on healthcare for the pandemic, for a next possible wave. I think a combination of this should set us then on steady growth for coming years.
And Mr. Narendran, what we've seen, of course, is a comeback of the manufacturing sector, right? And that has, of course, been reflected in the stock markets as well. And we can see that, for example, look at what the textile stocks have been doing. Now, we've seen the announcement of so many PLI schemes. Are you hopeful, or does industry want more PLI schemes from union budget?
I think the existing PLI schemes need to be seen through. Some of the sectors have got a good, healthy allocation, and that's attracted investments. So if you look at electronics manufacturing, it's got good support. Semiconductors, a lot of announcements have been made. Automobile sector has got a lot of support. So I think these are areas certainly which will see investments. Automobile has traditionally seen a lot of investments and growth. So I think we are set up reasonably well to increase the share of manufacturing in GDP. I know the economic survey says it's gone up by 1% or so, but I think manufacturing is a long haul, but a very important part of our journey of development, cannot be ignored, needs to be supported. And I think we're doing the right things.
Mr. Bajaj, I understand that budget may not be the appropriate or the right forum for inflation management, but hopes are running high, right? Because you've got inflation now in multi-decade highs, whether you look at Europe, whether you look at North America, back home as well. Inflation has become a concern. Is this an opportunity for the Central Exchequer to address this?
Well, it clearly needs to be addressed in a sensible manner. We have seen both the central bank and the government coordinate very closely over the last 2 years through the pandemic with whether with fiscal or monetary stimulus. We can see the larger countries which had spent a lot more money than a country like us now starting to scale back. And this is something that the government and the central bank needs to look at, keeping in mind our particular situation. We still have to get good, steady growth to come in. We know that we have to start moderating the fiscal deficit, but do this gradually. Don't tighten both fiscal and monetary policy at the same time. Create a glide path to get to a more normalized fiscal deficit in the coming years, over say the next 3-4 years or so. And more importantly, communicate so that the private sector businesses know what's on the mind as far as inflation, interest rates are concerned. You naturally can't share the exact numbers, but if we know a direction, then we can anticipate and we can align ourselves to that.
Mr. Narendran, we've of course seen a commodity inflation, right? Whether it is metals, a space that you understand so well by being the Tata Steel top boss too. But is this an opportunity? For example, we did have Sanjiv Mehta of HUL talking about, yes, the budget can, for example, bring down duties on crude oil or palm oil.
Yeah, so commodity-led inflation is in some sense there. Some of it is temporary, some of it is structural. The temporary part is settling down because supply chains could not cope up with the sudden surge in demand. We're seeing that getting adjusted, whether it's container rates, whether it is even steel prices, metal prices. It's settled down at levels lower than what we saw 6 months back. But having said that, I think there is certainly going to be a future where China is going to be exporting less and less of a lot of commodities, which it used to export in plenty and keep the prices down. That will have an impact on input costs. Oil is going to also reflect geopolitical issues, which we are seeing roll out, happen between Ukraine and Russia and things like that. And that is something we should watch out for as well, because India's import bill depends a lot on oil. So I think there are a number of issues that we need to keep an eye on. I don't think it's going to be a derailer. It's going to be a risk that we need to manage.
Okay, let's see if we do start to see any kind of duty cuts, whether it's for China Plus or, of course, just bringing down a commodity price inflation. Sanjiv Bajaj, when we look at the fiscal math heading into the budget speech, everybody seems to be of the view that the 6.8% target will not just be met, but it'll be a figure maybe 6.5%, 6.3%. There have been various reports and various economists who've been talking on that. So another chance for the government to spend a lot more?
Not really. I think the government has managed this year quite well. And as a result of those policies, your direct indirect tax collections have increased. Non-tax revenue from RBI to the government was large. And that makes us believe, hence, that this fiscal deficit will be, as you're saying, a lower range than what was expected for the year. I think, again, a gradual glide path, drop it another 20-30 basis points going into the next year, that will still give enough room to do a lot of other things to support this economy. We are in a better stage than where we were last year, but we are not completely out of the woods yet. So it can be more moderate than last year, but not something radical.
So TV Narendran, what is CI's recommendation? Loosen the purse strings, but don't completely lose the plot. How much more expenditure would industry want? And more importantly, will industry also play ball and start, doing its bit by increasing capex?
I think what we're saying is, we've done well to be at 6.8% this year. We are saying that the glide path should be, kind of not so ambitious that it derails the recovery, because let's not assume that we are all fine, because even if you look at this year's growth, a lot of it is based on the first half of the year, 13% growth against a low base. And we were not growing at 8% before the pandemic. So I think there is a need to make sure that we are back on 8.5% growth. It will require some doing. A lot of it is being done. Focus on infrastructure.
As well as TV Narendran on what India Inc. wants from the budget. Bye.